Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today is Sunday, July 14th, 2013. We're reading from the Bhagavatam. We left off the first canto, 6th chapter, text 26, and I wanted to go back to that verse. There's one thing I was thinking about. In the purport, Prabhupada says, and we'll read 27 today, he says, the life of a sincere devotee of the Lord is thus explained in a nutshell by Narada Muni, by his personal example. So, this morning I was thinking, there's two things that go on in the life of the devotee. One is his realization, or his level of Krishna consciousness. And that is independent, or can be independent, especially in the stage of sadhana, in the lower stages of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, of his sincerity. In other words, one can be extremely sincere, but be filled with material desire. And so the material desires will dissipate in course of time by the process of devotional service. And of course we try to control them, we try not to act upon them, but they exist, and the other anarthas exist. So what one has control of is one's sincerity. So you can be very fallen and very sincere. And so the sincerity is what's most important, because that's what you have control of. And you don't have control you have some control of how you act or how you respond to your material desires, but the fact that they're there are products of past conditioning. So this morning I was thinking of something I read yesterday, where Prabhupada said we should hanker, when we chant the holy name, to have tears in our eyes. We should hanker for the symptoms, ecstatic symptoms, sattvika bhavas, such as crying, tears in the eyes, voice choking. He said we should hanker for those symptoms. But really what he means by hankering for those symptoms, those are symptoms, those are byproducts of bhava. So really he's saying we should be hankering for bhava. But if we have bhava, then when we chant the holy name we'll be crying. So we should be hankering to be at that position where we realize Krishna's in his name when we chant, not that we just repetitively chant and not feel much, or feel anything, or become bored. But you can't bring that stage about. You can desire it. You can hanker for it. Kabe habe bolo se dinamar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is showing that example. He's hankering. When, oh when will that day be mine? When all my offenses ceasing, the taste for the name increasing. When, oh when will your mercy shine? When, oh when will that day be mine? So we're waiting for that day. But while we're waiting, we have to deal with who we are and where we're at. So one's level of sincerity can be very strong, and that's where one has most control over, is how sincere we are. So sincerity is very important, and that's what really carries us through Krishna consciousness. It's not where we're at, but it's the force which is pushing us forward, and that force is our sincerity. So we may be on a lower level, but if the force of sincerity is strong, it will push us to the higher level. And if we're on a higher level and we lose that sincerity, then we fall to a lower level. So we shouldn't be so discouraged by our existential condition, where we're at now, whatever level we're at now. We should always be hankering for a higher level and sincerely trying for it, and accept whatever level we're at as the realization of our level of advancement at this point. And of course always try to improve and deal with our anarthas as best we can. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but it's the sincerity to come to the higher level it's everything in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise it's very easy that we could lament that we're not on that higher level. Oh, I'm so fallen, I'm so low, I'm so this, I'm so that. But if I sincerely want to advance, that's where the focus should be, and we should be satisfied. that we can be sincere devotees, that we can sincerely execute Krishna consciousness. So in the teachings of Stephen Covey, there's this teaching called you have a circle of concern and you have a circle of influence. So it's a good point because it relates to this. Our concern is that we want to be pure devotees, but the influence, the circle of influence means what can I do now? I can execute the process, but in terms, we could say you have a circle of influence and the circle of result, and the result will come as a byproduct of our advancement. But the influence is that we can be sincere. That's what I can do now, and I can control myself. But until I'm on a higher stage of Krishna consciousness, the material desires will not vanish. They'll still be there. So we shouldn't lament that they're there. And what would be really wrong, or really bad to do, would be to lament that they're not there and thus not try to come to a higher stage, not hanker for a higher stage, not sincerely pray for it. Kabe habe bolo se dinamar. When will that day come? Well, I'll be running along the banks of the Ganges, half mad of mind, chanting Gaud Hari, Gaud Hari, Gaud Hari, in ecstasy. When will that day come? That no matter what level of Krishna consciousness we're on, we should always hanker for that. That's our, whatever our goal is, whatever the sadhya is, the goal, we should be hankering for that. So even when we're chanting and we're not chanting well, still we should be hankering. When will that day come when I will shed a tear chanting the holy name? That is what I want. That will be my perfection. Otherwise, what is my chanting? What is my bhakti? It is just a ritual. So I want to come to a real level. So even when it's a genuine level of devotion, so even when it's ritual, still we can hanker for the higher stage. And of course, some devotees might think, well, is it artificial to hanker for a higher stage when you're not on it? There's nothing wrong in hankering after it if you understand, if you're in the right consciousness now, you understand that you're not qualified for it, but it's what you want, and you're hankering for it so you can render better service to your guru, to Krishna. And you're hankering for it because you know your spiritual master wants you to come to that level. So it's not that you're hankering for it because you think you're qualified, or it's not that you're hankering for it because you think you can enjoy this. But it's hankering for genuine. It's like saying, I want to love Krishna, but I'm not qualified, but I have that desire. So that's a good desire. As long as you realize the process to achieve it, you realize the disqualifications you have, then it's okay to hanker for it. Also, we can hanker for it in the sense that, Krishna, I don't deserve it, but this is what I want, and I know your mercy is very great. But somehow or other I want this, please help me achieve it. So it's also not that a devotee thinks, I want it cheaply, that Krishna just give it to me without any effort, or without any qualification. No, but the devotee, in the sense, his prayer to have it is the sense that I'll have the qualification to get it, that you'll elevate me to the practices that can give it, and to the consciousness that can give it. So that's all totally in line with sadhana, the proper mentality. So in that mentality, we can hanker, or we should hanker, because the other thing is that it's the nature to hanker, it's the nature to desire. So if we're not desiring that, then we'll desire so many other things, right? So better have an intense desire to have Krishna consciousness than to have something else, than have an intense desire for something that's not so Krishna conscious or not Krishna conscious at all. When, oh when will that day be mine? So we're chanting the holy name and thinking, when will I realize Krishna in his name? When will that day come? Please, when will that day come when I have some taste for chanting? When will that day come when I chant the holy name and I'll experience ecstasy rather than boredom, or rather than sleepiness? When will that day come? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So even in this state, we can hanker that way, and that's just our sincerity to be Krishna conscious. So sincerity is most important. When I was, when somebody's very young in Krishna consciousness, when someone's very young in Krishna consciousness and they don't have, thank you. You're wasting all these flowers on me. Why don't you offer them to the deities?
They have more rooms.
Hare Krishna. So when someone's very young in Krishna consciousness, then they don't have a lot of credits, Krishna conscious credits. And just what do we have when we're young? We're beginning the process of devotional service. We have our sincerity. That's the main wealth we have. You could say, if you use this example, say the main wealth you have in purchasing Krishna consciousness in the beginning of your bhakti is your sincerity, is your desire for it, your eagerness. Because you don't have much else other than that. It's not like you've built up tons of bhakti sukriti, at least not in this life. So what are you going on? You're going on your sincerity, but that sincerity, it's like a strong wind. It blows the sails of your bhakti. So even in that stage when you haven't accumulated a lot of devotional service, still you can continue in Krishna consciousness. And you can go on in a determined way, in a somewhat steady way by your sincerity. Now, the other thing also is that steadiness is called nishta, and steadiness it's a higher stage of Krishna consciousness that comes after anartha nivritti. So what you'll find in the earlier stages is that we're not steady. One day we're strong and one day we're weak, and one day we're enthusiastic and one day we're not. So it's especially important to understand that the sincerity is what gets you through all those times. And the sincerity, if we translate sincerity, I think one thing we can say is that I want Krishna conscious. I want to be Krishna conscious. No matter what difficulties I'm experiencing, I want to be Krishna conscious. So when I fall, when I make a mistake, when I fail in different ways, what keeps me going? It's that desire. So that's the sincerity. I want to be Krishna conscious despite my faults, despite my failures, despite whatever I lack. Because otherwise it'll appear in your mind as a contradiction, as I don't have any qualification for it and I keep failing, so I don't have a right to desire it. Right? It's like saying I want to go to Harvard, but I'm not a good student. So someone will say, that's not realistic, because you're not going to make it into Harvard. It's not practical thinking. But for a devotee wants to be Krishna conscious, and Krishna consciousness is the highest thing, and a devotee can't stop himself from thinking about and desiring that, even if he doesn't have the qualification. That's what we learn from the prayers of great devotees. That even they don't have the qualification, still they're asking Krishna for love, for bhakti. So we shouldn't be discouraged by our disqualification. And in the practice of Krishna consciousness, many times we'll fall short of our goals. Many times we'll do stupid things. That's that's to be accepted as just part of being a neophyte. Being unsteady is part of being a neophyte. It's only when you come to the stage after anartha nivritti that you start to become steady, fairly steady. So in the unsteady stage, don't become discouraged. It's your sincere desire to advance that keeps you going, even despite you may look at externally and say, well, I don't have qualification. I look at myself and I think, well, how can I ever be Krishna conscious? But we have to focus on the desire to be, not the disqualification. Because Krishna will accept the sincere desire and reciprocate with that, even if we're disqualified. And part of how he reciprocates with our disqualification is he gives us the holy name, because you don't need qualification to chant. And the holy name will do everything. So even if we're disqualified, at least if we can chant sincerely, then that's all we need. We don't need so many other qualifications. And whatever other qualifications we need, they'll come from chanting, from hearing, from association. It'll all develop. So we shouldn't become discouraged. Because if we become discouraged, then what happens? Then we give up. Or we lessen the intensity of our practice. And then we won't achieve success. So sincerity means I'm willing to go on. I'm not willing, I want to go on, no matter what. It's like one devotee asked me about 5 years ago and said, well, what do you think, I forget the question, it was something like, what has kept you in Krishna consciousness, or what do you think in your own life has helped you the most? And my answer was this, the willingness to continue, no matter how unqualified I am, no matter how many faults I see in myself, or no matter how many times I fail. Just the desire that the goal is what I want. It's so important and so necessary, so that even if I slip, still I don't give up. I don't become discouraged. So I think we can define that as sincerity. You know, that will never become discouraged. We'll never become discouraged even when we are discouraged. Don't be discouraged even when you are discouraged. Because we will be discouraged. Right? Because when you commit mistakes, when you fail, when you fall down, when you don't chant well, whatever you do wrong is discouraging. So when you're discouraged, don't be discouraged. When you're discouraged, remain sincere. And sincerity as that desire to achieve higher levels of Krishna consciousness. That's it. So Prabhupada's saying here, the life of a sincere devotee. What is a sincere devotee? A very brand new bhakta can be a sincere devotee. Right? And that's what's most important. Nahi kalyana kaschid dogatin tatta gacchati. One who does good is never overcome by evil. So we may slip, but we won't be overcome. That's the difference. We may slip, but we won't be overcome. We will slip, not that we may slip. It's very rare and unusual in the beginning of devotional service to not slip, because the nature of bhakti in the beginning is anishtita. It's not steady. Why is it not steady? Because there are material tendencies and hankerings. That's why it's unsteady. Right? So naturally, when you begin Krishna consciousness, two people survived the Festival of Colors in New Vrindavan. Is it New Vrindavan? They have T-shirts here. Yeah. So sometimes we might be discouraged because we're not steady, but not steady is the nature of the beginning of devotional service. So don't be discouraged by it. It's just how it's going to be. It's anishtita. It's not nishta yet. So that's the nature of it. But despite the fact that that's the nature, bhajana kriya is the steadiness, is that you do the service. You do the bhajan despite the unsteadiness. Okay, I'm unsteady, I fail, I fall down, but still I chant my rounds every day. For us, that's our nishta, the steadiness of the sadhana, and then the unsteadiness may come internally because we're not mature. It's just the way it is. Just to have to accept. We become discouraged, but it's just the way it is. If you accept something as the way it is, then it's easier to deal with it. So if we accept that sometimes we won't be as Krishna conscious as we like to be. Sometimes we'll make mistakes. Sometimes we'll slip. Sometimes we'll do stupid things. If we accept that's part of the condition that we're in, and that the process will help us overcome that, then we remain sincere. That's the idea. Does that make sense? So that's sincerity. Yes?
Sincerity is keep on doing, even though we don't do it correctly.
Yeah. Well, you should try to do it correctly. You should know how to do it correctly. And at least sometimes you should do it correctly, but you may not always do it correctly. Yeah, I don't mean it as an excuse to fail, but I'm saying in the normal course of life of a sincere devotee, there will be failures, and that should be accepted as normal. See, the whole point is that if we don't think that way, we can't progress to the stage where there won't be failures, because you'll give up before you reach it, because you'll think, well, I'm a failure, so why should I try? And even if you're initiated and you've made your vows, you'll continue, but you may not continue with enthusiasm, because you'll feel, what's the point? I'm not advancing. But you can't stop now because you made your commitment. So then you reduce the intensity of your desire to advance because you think it's hopeless, because I've tried and I've failed so many times. But that's just part of the process. You're going to try and you're going to fail, because that's anishtita bhakti. Until you're anartha nivritti, you're going to fail. And how do you get to anartha nivritti? By failing and trying again, and failing and trying again, and gradually improving. And a lot of people attend japa workshops and they'll say, my rounds were really good, but a few months later they degraded. So now what do? You have to continue. Try to be enthusiastic. Try to upgrade again. Try to go on sincerely. Try to improve. And what you find is that the nature of Krishna consciousness is that practically instantaneously you can improve yourself just by your own willpower and your own desire. Today I'm going to decide to improve myself. So I do things to improve myself. You can always do that. And sometimes, when the devotees say, well, my japa was really good, but then it 6 months after the work, it was good for the first 6 months, but now I'm sorry to say it's not good. So naturally I think in my mind, so why don't you do something to improve? So it's kind of like there's a resignation that it's not good, and that's just how it is. But it's never just how it is. It's only just how it is if we allow it to be just how it is. But if you do something to correct it, you can improve it. That's part of being sincere. And so whenever if a devotee's not doing well, and let's say you went to your spiritual master, or let's say hypothetically you went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I'm not doing well, I'm not chanting nicely anymore, I'm not chanting sincerely. And then Prabhupada might say something like, well, just be sincere. Just try. Because that's all you can do. And then higher levels, you can't have the symptoms and characteristics and realizations of a higher level of Krishna consciousness when you're on a lower level. So part of our discouragement is we want the realizations of the higher level, but we're still on the lower level. So you don't get it. You don't understand calculus when you're taking mathematics. You have to take algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and then you can understand. So you can't lament, 1 plus 1 is 2, I have to study 1 plus 1 is 2, I'm so discouraged. No. You can't have those calculus realizations, 1 plus 1 is 2. You just have to, right? So come to a higher stage. So sometimes we lament that we don't have the realizations and the steadiness of a higher stage. Well, that's okay. You have to come to that stage, and you'll have it. And part of how you come to the stage is being in the present stage and failing, and getting up and failing and getting up, and then realizing, when I fail, I can rectify these problems. I can try harder. And you learn how to advance that way. And it's all because of your sincerity. It's your sincerity that keeps pushing you through all this. And if you lose sincerity, then where's the motive to go on? It's like, what's the use? Right? We already think, what's the use if we're not doing well? But as long as we're sincere, we'll never let the thought, what's the use, override us. We'll always think, I must become Krishna conscious. It's too valuable to give up. That will always override everything. And then if that sincerity is strong enough, then we'll see how to improve the situation. Krishna will help us. Right? So that's why sincerity is so important. It's fundamental. It's key to everything. So I just got to check. I have to get on Krishna.com and Mayapur TV to see if anybody's saying anything. Does purity mean, Carolina says, we are sincere and we are trying our best? That's one definition. Of course, you can have the definition of purity as you say there. I keep good. Now I have both chats up. So okay, you can see the external manifestation of purity, but somebody is pure. Their heart is pure. They're free from material hankering. They're free from material desire. They're free from envy. Okay, that's one level of purity. But the other level of purity that Prabhupada talked about was the external sadhana practice, that we are willing to execute this. We do this every day. Despite all the problems, all the obstacles, all the internal impurities, we execute that. So that's, Prabhupada said, the strength of our movement is our purity. So when Prabhupada said that, all the devotees were young. So then based on Carolina's question, we could say, well, he wasn't talking about purity in terms of realization, or purity in terms of devotees being on the stage of nishta. He was talking about purity in terms of their pure following, chanting 16 rounds, following the regulative principles, rising early, and so forth. That's what he was talking about. So he said, maintain our purity is our strength. And that's how he said it all the time. Rise early, chant your rounds, Mangalarti, be clean, read Bhagavatam, do service. That's our purity. And then the internal purity will come from the external purity. Because again, your internal purity, it will take time. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Almost all impurities will be removed by hearing Bhagavatam, but it's gradual. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. So that verse refers to the stage of anartha nivritti. And in the purport, Prabhupada said 75% at the stage of anartha nivritti. So it means most, but there's still some we have to deal with. Even on the stage of Baba, there's still some impurity. One can fall from the stage of Baba. It's not completely pure yet. But the external purity of following the principles as best we can, that we always have to maintain that purity as much as possible. So yes, in answer, I would say your sincerity, sincerity is our purity. But of course, one can't say, well, I'm sincere, I'm just fallen. I can't follow, I'm sincere, because then Prabhupada would say, no, that's not sincerity. If you're sincere, you'll follow. So they have to go together. So another answer to your question is, we can define sincerity as purely following the regulative principles, the 16 rounds, and the other practices of sadhana. Of course, if one is helplessly fallen, but sincerely doesn't want to be fallen, then one can sincerely pray to Krishna to help uplift oneself in recognition of that condition. But generally, Prabhupada's answer to a question like this is, if you're sincere, then you'll do the practices. You'll keep your vows. That's your sincerity. And sometimes Prabhupada would say that it may be difficult for a devotee to keep their vows, but because of the affection they have for their spiritual master, they'll keep them. So that's part of their sincerity also. It's difficult to follow, but because of my dedication to my spiritual master, then out of love and affection, I follow, even I don't feel like following. And that's true. And so many things we do because of love for Prabhupada, because he wanted them, or love for our spiritual master, because he wanted them. And they may be difficult, and that's part of our sincerity. Well, I'll do it because he wants it. I may not feel like it always, but he wants it, so I'll do it. Okay. Good question. Okay, so now we're going to read today's verse, unless there are other questions on this verse. If not,
What is seriousness?
what does it mean to be serious? Isn't that a radio station? Sirius? Is Sirius a Greek god or a planet or something? Serius. What is it? It's a radio broadcasting station, but it was named after a galaxy or something, or a planetary system. Anyway, or a Greek god or something. I don't know. What does it mean to be serious? I would say, in Prabhupada's words, serious means you follow your vows. There's another story. I was with a devotee, and he told me that one Prabhupada disciple said, that Prabhupada had said to her in a letter, or she heard in a lecture, he said it was about getting up in the morning early. And he said, if you're not getting up early, you're not serious. So let's say we want to learn something. Let's say we want to learn tabla. So the tabla teacher says, you need to practice half hour every day. These are the beats I want you to practice this week. So then you come back next week, and the teacher says, did you practice? He said, well, I didn't practice half hour every day, and some days I missed, and I didn't practice all the beats. The teacher might say, well, it doesn't seem like you're serious about learning tabla. Because if you're serious, you would have practiced. So you can apply that to sadhana bhakti. If you're serious, then you put it to practice. And also if you're serious, you'll chant your rounds seriously. And you'll make sure that your life is lived in a way that you're making advancement. That would be serious, right? And if you're serious about material life, then you could apply the same principle. You'll work hard, you'll take care of things. If you're not serious about material life, you'll become a brahmachari or sannyasi. You don't care. You just let it fall apart. And if you're not serious about spiritual life, you don't care. You'll let it fall apart. So anything you're serious about, you take responsibility to do it well, right? So you could apply that example to anything. Student, you're not doing well in school. You're not a serious student. Your health's not good. You're not serious about, and the doctor's told you what you do. Well, he's not serious about taking care of his health. So, spiritual master lays out the principles of Krishna consciousness, and then you practice them. That's being serious. As you practice them as best you can, then you're serious. You do things that are necessary, even if you don't want to, because you're serious. That's part of sadhana bhakti. You do a lot of things you don't want to, because there's no spontaneity. Raganuga bhakti is impelled by the desire to serve. Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is impelled by the rule. That's why you do it. So when you advance further, you do it because you like it. You'll do it even if there's no rule. The rule's not important. You don't need the rules anymore. You need the rules when you don't have the desire. Right? Does that make sense? Someone might tell you to do something, and you say, you don't have to tell me I like doing this. I do it all the time. I just want to make sure you do this. I just want to make sure you understand this. No, don't worry. I do this every day. Like you may go to the doctor. Said, it's very important to exercise. I want to make sure you... I said, don't worry, I exercise every day. You don't have to tell me. Something like that. So that's spontaneous devotional service. It's a higher stage. So when you're not on that stage, where does the impetus come to do anything? It will come mostly from the rule. I'm not saying that you don't have an attraction. You might have an attraction. You might like doing a lot of these things. But you may be a little bit liking it and a little bit motivated by the rule, not entirely doing it because you want to. Right? Just like we have 16 rounds for devotees living in our temples. We have 16 rounds for those who want to take initiation. Now, let's say hypothetically, we said, when you took an initiation vow, you said, I'll say, what are the principles? You said to try to chant 16 rounds, but chant at least 4. Let's say that was a vow, right? So in the stages of Vaidhi Bhakti, probably a lot of people wouldn't chant 16 because they didn't vow to. But in the stage of Raganuga, or higher stage of spontaneous devotional service, you would chant more than 16, and you wouldn't have to have a vow, right? So the vow, a lot of times we chant 16 rounds, and we know we don't want to, and we know the only reason we're doing it is because we took a vow to do it, right? You didn't get your round, you didn't get up early in the morning, you're having a hard time finishing your rounds, it's late at night, you're trying to finish. and you know the only reason you're up late at night and you're tired is because you took a vow to chant. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it, right? But when you come to the spontaneous level, 16 rounds is like, it's appetizer for you. It's nothing, because you like doing it. And the saying is, time flies when you're having fun. So when you like doing something, you don't notice the time. When you don't like doing something, time moves slowly. Oh, it's taking so long to finish my rounds. Right? So that's Vaidhi. So it's only because the rule is there that you do it. If the rule wasn't there, it's likely you wouldn't do it. Right? So that's one of the reasons we take a vow. Because when you get initiated, it's like, okay, what does it mean? We talked about this yesterday. I'm becoming serious about Krishna consciousness. So because I'm becoming serious, I'm going to take a vow to do this. Because I want to ensure that I'll do it the rest of my life. So I'm going to vow. I'm going to vow, I'm going to make... So when I vow, now I'm vowing to my spiritual master, I'm vowing to my guru. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Now, we have an agreement, and the guru says, okay, you're vowing to do this, and I'm vowing to help you in your Krishna consciousness, to take you back to Godhead. I'll take that responsibility. You take the responsibility to follow my instructions. I'll take the responsibility to help you become Krishna conscious. I won't give up on you, you won't give up on me. That's the idea. That's what's happening. So we're making this connection. Of course, we're also vowing to Krishna, to the other devotees, not just our spiritual master. But we're making the vow because we want to dedicate our lives, right? And we know the consciousness of making a vow is that once I make a vow, now I'm duty bound to do it. So that means I'm serious enough that I'll commit to my spiritual master, to the Vaishnavas, to Krishna, that I will follow your instructions. To chant 16 rounds every day and follow the 4 regular principles without fail. Minimum 16. Prabhupada, when devotees were initiated, when they said, I will chant 16 rounds every day, Prabhupada said, minimum 16. 16 on the beads, unlimited off the beads. Always chanting. So, making that vow is special, because it means now I'm seriously taking to Krishna consciousness. That this is important. This is important enough for me in my life that everything else will take a secondary position. Because once you take a vow, now everything in your life has to support your vows. Right? So anything that could get in the way of your vows, then you have to give it up. That's one of the principles of surrender. Accepting everything favorable, sankalpa, and rejecting everything that's not favorable. So when you take a vow, it's like, okay, this is serious, right? My life is serious now. I'm going to chant 16 rounds. I have to adjust my life so I can chant 16 rounds a day. I'm going to follow the 4 regular principles. I have to adjust my life, so I follow these principles. So it's like at that point, okay, this is serious. This is not just some religion, but this is like my lifestyle now. So then I'm going to take initiation. That's serious. Excuse me, it's allergy season here. And I forgot to take my allergy medicine for a few days because I don't like taking allopathic medicine. So I wasn't sneezing, so I stopped taking it. But when you stop taking it, then you start sneezing again. So now my nose is itching, so I keep scratching it. Is that a good excuse for scratching my nose? It's the best I could come up with. Yeah, okay. So, anyone have any other questions on this topic before we go to verse 27? Your daughter's about to cut her fingers off. 2-year-old girl is walking in, has a butcher knife in her hand, and she's going like this. She's serious about cutting her fingers. So when devotees took initiation, Prabhupada expected that that level of seriousness would be there. And he would often say, he said, because we don't force anyone to take initiation, although sometimes the force is there through the knowledge that, well, in the Shastra it said one should take shelter of a guru, but it also says one should take initiation from the guru. So there's that sense of, well, if I don't take initiation, I'm not connected. My service is not being accepted by Krishna and all that. So then sometimes one feels pressure to take initiation before one is qualified, but Prabhupada never pressured anyone, because when they couldn't follow, he said that he would say, well, if you can't follow, why'd you take initiation? So he wasn't forcing. And there's no rush to take initiation before you know you can follow. It's because you just take shelter of the guru and you get guided by the guru. So you have that shelter, you have that relationship. Just like Prabhupada said, when I met my guru, I accepted him in my heart, and that's the real initiation. So you accept the guru in your heart. This is the person I want to serve. This is the person I want to follow. Now, when you're ready to make a commitment to 16 rounds of the regulative principles, at that point you formalize the relationship. But the connection is made by hearing. The connection is made by following the instructions of the spiritual master. Now that's the real connection, because not just because one formally gets initiated does it necessarily mean there's a connection. The connection is in the heart. That's the idea. And it's also a connection to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Now the spiritual master will give many instructions. We may not be able to execute all of them, and we may not be able to execute many of them right away. But still, the idea is that he said it, and we want to try to follow, and there are basic instructions he's given that we must follow. So that goes on before one formally becomes initiated. And then before that time, before initiation, one sees if they're serious and they can follow. Okay? Anything else? Okay. Chit Shakti is here. That's a nice name. Chit Shakti Devi Dasi. Nice to see all of you here. Somehow or other, I don't see myself. Christian shape. Anyway, that's weird. I see a picture of the deities. Well, it's better than seeing me. Do you not see me? Because now, maybe I lost Krishna.com. Maybe I lost my. Yeah, here I am. Okay. So, I incarnated into, at least on my computer, I incarnated into Krishna. There's a picture of Krishna there. No, I guess you can't incarnate into Krishna. Okay. It just looked like I did. So, today's verse is text 27, sixth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. Evam Krishna Mate Brahman Nashak Tasyaman Alatmanaha Kala Padurubhut Kale Tadit Sodhamani Jata. Sodhamani, illuminating. And so, O Brahmana, Vyasadeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and who therefore had no attachments, being completely free from all material taints, met with death as lightning and illumination occurs simultaneously. So the previous verse described that he was traveling and chanting the glories of the Lord. teaching Krishna consciousness, and then he said eventually he died, and so he's describing here what his death was like. He remembers from his last life. To be fully absorbed in, he remembers his last life, otherwise he wouldn't be able to describe it. And he remembers his death. To be fully absorbed in thought of Krishna means clearance of material dirts or hankerings. As a very rich man has no hankering for small petty things, so also a devotee of Lord Krishna who is guaranteed to pass on to the kingdom of God, where life is eternal, fully cognizant and blissful, naturally has no hankerings for petty material things, which are like dolls or shadows of the reality and are without permanent value. That is a sign of spiritually enriched persons, and in due course of time, when a pure devotee is completely prepared, all of a sudden the change of body occurs, which is commonly called death. And for the pure devotee, such a change takes place exactly like lightning and illumination follows simultaneously. That is to say, a devotee simultaneously changes his material body and develops a spiritual body by the will of the Supreme. Even before death, a pure devotee has no material affection, due to his body's being spiritualized like a red-hot iron in contact with fire. So, this example is often given to explain how something material can be spiritualized. So you use something in Krishna consciousness. Here, the body is being described as being used in Krishna consciousness. So the body is spiritualized. So he's saying at the time of death, it's not like an ordinary person's dying, because the body is already, you're going to a spiritual destination, and you're already in a spiritual body, in the sense your body's been spiritualized. Prabhupada says, we develop a spiritual body after death, but Prabhupada's saying in this life the body's spiritualized. So the example is often given by Srila Prabhupada is that if you put iron into a fire long enough, it becomes fire. And someone will say, but it's still iron. And Prabhupada said, then touch it. It's fire. Okay, it's iron, but it's fire. Okay, this is a material body, but it's used totally in Krishna's service, therefore it's spiritualized. Okay, it's temporary, but it's fully spiritualized because it's fully utilized for Krishna. So, now you're engaged in devotional service, and then you die, and you'll be engaged in devotional service. So, Krishna consciousness solves a lot of problems, especially the problem of dying. So Narada Muni is saying, well, when he died, it's like the lightning came, which was leaving the body, and the illumination, which is going from one spiritual position to the next. Now, first thing Prabhupada says here, to be absorbed in thinking of Krishna means clearance of material dirts or hankerings. Because we just talked about this yesterday. Why would you have no material hankering? Mayavadis and personalists have no material hankering, but eventually they start hankering for material things because they're not full in their spiritual life. So you would have no material hankering. Why? Prabhupada gives the example. Why would a rich man not want something insignificant? Because he doesn't need it, because he can have something better. So the only way to become completely renounced, detached, to become completely satiated and satisfied and not want anything is to have something better. There's no other way, because we're not vacant of desire. You know, if you're really hungry, and there have been times when we've all been really hungry, we just eat anything. We just want to appease our hunger. Whatever is available, we'll eat it, right? If you're really hungry, you're not going to spend an hour and a half cooking a meal. You'll just, whatever is available, you'll eat it. Or if you're like some people, they'll eat while they cook because they're so hungry. I mean, devotees don't normally do that. But, they're so hungry they can't wait, and they're cooking something they're eating while they're cooking. Americans will do that. So we've accepted an inferior lifestyle, inferior form of pleasure, all kinds of inferior things because we're empty. We're not satiated spiritually. But when you have Krishna consciousness, then you can actually become free from material hankering because you have something much better. And that's the only way. It's never going to happen any other way. So a lot of times we, as devotees in practicing Krishna consciousness, we have attachments we're trying to become free from. And so the question will come up, how do I become free from this desire? And there's only one way. You can try other ways. You try through knowledge. Okay, I'll understand this desire is bad. Does that always work? No, not always. Sometimes it only works for a while. You have that experience? You understand something's bad, so you say, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's bad. It's hurting me. It's hurting so many things in my life. I'm not going to do it. And so you go on for a while. That's based on knowledge. But unless there's something better, then you fall back down. That's what Ruha Krichena Padam Padam Tata. That's the whole shloka in Bhagavatam, the impersonalists fall down. So that we do that also, because it's just gyan, it's just knowledge, and knowledge alone. Okay, everything is bad, all right, but if you don't experience it as bad, you do it again. Prabhu, why are you doing that? Well, I don't know. Why? You did it because you thought it would make you happy, right? You swore you weren't going to do it, but you did it again because you thought it would give you some pleasure, right? But don't you know it's not going to give you pleasure? Well, yeah, I know, but still, my heart, I thought, for that, I lost my mind, because we're not satiated. We're not getting something better. So just by knowledge, if you don't get something better, the knowledge, it's okay. But you see, the knowledge, this is an important point. It's a good point, and it's an important point. The knowledge alone is not sufficient to detach you, but it's the knowledge which brings you to bhakti. The knowledge will bring you to bhakti, and then the bhakti will detach you. But if you try to detach just on knowledge, it won't work. And that's what we do sometimes, right? Say, well, I know this is bad, and this, that, and the next thing. So we try to analyze how it's bad, but it doesn't work. But the analysis of bad is only there to bring us to be more firmly fixed in our devotional service, and that's what will detach us, not the knowledge itself. Does that make sense? The knowledge itself usually will detach us enough to keep us engaged in devotional service. But the knowledge without the taste of Krishna consciousness, it's not going to do it. Because we'll all, it's how many times you do things and you say, I know that was bad, but I did it. And how many times even while you're doing it, you say, I know it's bad, and you're doing it. Right? Because that's only knowledge. The knowledge has to affect the heart. Right? So, we say in Krishna consciousness, you don't need knowledge and renunciation to be Krishna conscious. We say knowledge and renunciation are byproducts of Krishna consciousness. So knowledge and renunciation are helpful, but ultimately they're byproducts. They're not, you don't get Krishna consciousness through knowledge and renunciation. You get Krishna consciousness through service, through bhakti, through love. Right? So then you might say, well, what's all this knowledge we have in our books? It's different knowledge. It's knowledge how to serve Krishna better. That's what our knowledge is. It's all about how to become a better bhakta. And then, when you engage your knowledge to become a better devotee, then you get the realization that was only in your head. Now you actually realize it and experience it. And then you say, I don't want to do this because now I can experience this causes me suffering. But before, it was just in my head. But my heart wanted to enjoy it, but my head was saying, don't do it, it's not good for you. But now, because I employ my knowledge to become a better devotee, then it's no longer in my head, it's in my heart also. Now not only do I know it, but I feel it. And because I feel it, I don't do it. I don't do that bad thing anymore. Because I feel it's bad for me. Just like you don't put your hand in fire. You don't have a problem with that. You are detached from putting your hand in fire. because you have direct experience, realization that this will cause suffering. But the kid doesn't have the realization, so you try to explain it to them, so they only have it in their head. So they're putting they don't believe it, they don't understand it. But once they put their hand in the fire, now they have realization, and they're not going to do it anymore. So that's how knowledge comes for us as a byproduct of bhakti. It comes as realization. Oh, Krishna consciousness is real pleasure. Material life is not pleasure. That becomes a realization to the point where you don't do it. You don't do anything wrong, anything bad. So therefore we say, knowledge is a byproduct of bhakti. It is not through knowledge that you get bhakti. It is through bhakti that you get knowledge. But the knowledge we have, much of the knowledge we have is not the knowledge that's referred to in shlokas that say, cultivate knowledge. That cultivation of knowledge is that I'm not the body, this is matter, but the knowledge we're cultivating more is how to serve Krishna, the qualities, the forms, the guna, the leelas of Krishna. We're cultivating that, and how to execute devotional service, and how only to detach ourselves so we can better execute devotional service. So Krishna consciousness is not about austerity. It really isn't. It's not about knowledge, and it's not about renunciation. It's about bhakti. But you need a little austerity, a little knowledge, renunciation to do it. But it's not the austerity, knowledge, and renunciation that the scripture refers to. It's different. In Narada Muni says, what's the use of renunciation and knowledge and austerity if you don't get bhakti? And if you have bhakti, then what's the use of knowledge, renunciation, and austerity? Because now you have bhakti. If you perform austerity, you don't get bhakti, what's the point of your austerity? And if you already have bhakti, then that's the result of austerity. So then what's the point of austerity? You have bhakti. Of course, within bhakti they have austerities, but this is speaking of it in general. Austerity, just for, go sit next to a fire in the summer. What's the point? What's the point of doing that if that won't give you bhakti, and it won't? And if you have bhakti, what's the point of doing that? Just chant the holy name. So that's the idea. So let's go to the chat and see who's chatting. Hare Krishna. Chat and be happy. Oh, I didn't disappear. Only seemed to disappear. Okay, so I have to leave in 3 minutes. So does anyone have any questions that I can answer in 3 minutes? We're on a fundraising program today, so we have to leave soon. Hare Krishna. So, I don't know, did I confuse you? Did that confuse you more? By what knowledge means? Now everything, for a devotee, everything is in relation to Krishna. So knowledge should be in relation to Krishna. So knowledge should be how to become more Krishna conscious, how to be a better devotee. So we have, Gita gives us knowledge, you're not the body, and like that. But that's just so we can begin devotional service. But the jnanis and so many people have knowledge that you're not the body, and they don't do devotional service. So that knowledge in and of itself doesn't bring you to bhakti. It might, when it's employed in bhakti, then that knowledge helps you in bhakti. But in and of itself, it may not help you come to bhakti. Right? Does that make sense? I think I might be on the wrong chat. I'm going to hit chat again. That's weird. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to end here so we can go do our fundraising. Okay, and then we're doing something tonight also. These guys are working me hard. 7:30 tonight, we're going to have another class on something. Sunday Feast program, Rochester. Gonna make special prasadam. Okay. Maybe we'll have a kirtan also, a live online kirtan. Okay. Clear. Okay. Carolina is clear. What's the Sanskrit for clear? Is there a word for clear? Well, you could say pure, shuddha. Shuddha. Shuddha means pure. Cheto dharpana marjanam. Cleansed, clear. Carolina marjanam. She's clear, cleansed. Carolina shuddha marjanam. Purely clean. Okay. Somebody said something funny. Purishkar. Purishkar. Maybe that's Bengali. No. Marjanam. Purishkar?
Solution. Solution.
Purishkar means solution
At least in Sanskrit.
in Sanskrit. That means solution. No. Yeah, okay. But she's clear. Clear. Clear in Sanskrit. Pure. What's the word for pure in Sanskrit?
Swacha.
Suddham.
Shuddha.
Suddham.
Sudam? No. Sudam in Sanskrit? Shuddha. 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 Shuddha, yeah. Shuddha Carolina. Carolina Shuddha. Carolina is Shuddha. Carolina Shuddha He. That's it. Carolina, no, in Hindi it'd be Carolina Shuddhe. Shud in Hindi? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Ram. Okay, Shuddha Carolina. Shuddha Carolina. Shuddha Carolina. Marjanam. Vishuddha Sattvam. Vasudeva Shabditam. Okay, Hare Bol everyone. We'll see you tonight. Hare Krishna.